Hi, welcome to the Growth Zone. I am Christian Bartsch, and with me today is Susan Meier. We have a fun and jam packed show for you today. We're going to be talking about what makes a good branding strategy, how can the creative part of branding stay on track, and we are going to finish off with what are Susan's tips to scaling one's brand visibility? Susan is a brand strategist and visual artist that can help you grow your business by tapping into your creativity as well as explain the myths about creativity that hold us back. When it comes to branding, there's so much that an entrepreneur is told to do. It often sounds like they need to turn their business into a media production company. So, what really makes a branding strategy a successful part of personal or company branding?
It's such a good question and so true what you point out that it can be a bit overwhelming these days with such a focus on social media and media in general. And I encourage people to step back from that for a moment. Not that it's not important, it's absolutely part of your activation and execution strategy. But before you get there and build your platform and your presence, you need to think very clearly about who you are and what your message is and what's going to be really interesting and meaningful for the customers that you serve. So I encourage my clients and those entrepreneurs and small businesses that I advise to start really thinking first about themselves. So often, myself included as an entrepreneur, we start with whatever our product or service is. We know what it is that we have to offer. But around that lies kind of three different things, the way that I see it. One is, who you really are and what you bring to the table, and that you may be just you as an individual, or it's you and your partner or your team. But what is that sort of DNA? What are your core values? What are the unique bits and pieces that make you you? And really digging into your specific identity before you start thinking about your product and service so that you understand the kind of origin story, the backstory, the kind of values and beliefs that you're operating from. That's going to start the process of figuring out what really makes you different and what's going to make your brand stand out. Another important piece is thinking about who you serve. So if you have a product or a service, you have customers. Sometimes if it's a nonprofit, you have other sorts of, or different kind of business, you have other sorts of constituents. But all of the folks that you're going to touch with whatever it is you're offering in the world, you need to think through their eyes as well and what it is that's meaningful and relevant to them. And I often give the example here of I worked in the light bulb industry at one point, and I think this is a story that's relevant to anybody who has kind of an exciting technology or scientific development. Where the product is really, all the effort has been put into the product itself, with a belief that because this is such an exciting development, there will surely be a market for it on the back end. But the folks who are developing that product are developers, right? Not marketers. And so I came into that business and many others over the years with a similar brief, which is help us understand how to translate our language into their language. So we talk about lumens, right? Or degrees Kelvin when we talk about light bulbs, but our audience doesn't really know or care about that. What they care about is the quality of light in their home and how it makes them feel. So I think that's a poignant example, because it shows such the dichotomy of what you might be thinking about if you're an engineer. And it's relevant to all of us, not just engineers who are building our business. We're ingrained in what we do, and we know with our expertise, but we don't necessarily know or live inside the minds of our customers. And thinking about it from their perspective, what's going to be really valuable and meaningful to them, both in a functional way, but also in a kind of emotional or aspirational way. So, with a light example, yes, they want light that looks a certain way or the light bulb to last a certain amount of time, but really the kind of aspirational or more elevated need, or insight for those customers is how that light makes them feel and how it relates to their overall quality of life. So thinking about things through the lens of your customer. And then the third piece, which I think is very exciting and really is the thing that takes your brand over the top, is thinking about what's going to make your brand pop, right? And that is about moments of delight. So you can do all the right things, have a high quality product, have that product speak directly to the needs of your customers, but maybe other people can do those things too. So what is it that makes your brand stand out, and what is it that's going to make your customers remember you and be loyal to you and have a meaningful relationship with you? Are those moments that punctuate their journey with you, that exceed their expectations, that go above and beyond. And I worked in the health insurance industry last year, which is a bit of an unlikely place in a way to come up with an anecdote about moments of delight. But I think that's why it was uh, such an exciting story for me. I interviewed their physicians that they worked with. This is a very large healthcare company, and all of the large healthcare companies in the U.S. struggle with their relationships with all of their constituents, right? It's a difficult industry. And what we found is that the companies, the physicians that are most satisfied with the relationship with a given healthcare provider, it's not based on the entire journey with them. It's not based on every single policy or interaction. What they did is they told me stories about this one time when I submitted a claim and it was so difficult, and I had this amazing customer service agent on the phone who just jumped through hoops to get this thing approved so that my patient could have their surgery the next day. And it was just outstanding. They're sometimes I struggle with them. They're not always great, but that one moment transformed the way I think about them, and they'll always kind of have a special place in my heart. And I think that's something that every entrepreneur, every industry can learn from. And it may not be a customer service moment. It may be something about your product. It may be, I had an experience as a consumer in a hotel recently, where they were waiting at my door at 5 a.m. to make sure that we were awake to go to the airport. I hadn't asked for a wake up call. I hadn't told them that I recalled when my flight was. And it was just that over and above level of customer service where they were really taking care of me, that it punctuated the experience with a moment of delight, which transformed permanently my experience of their brand. So I encourage people to find those kind of pop moments where they can really go above and beyond with their customers.
That's awesome, because I see the same thing as well with other brands and other businesses as well. It's so important to go the extra mile and show your clients really that you care, and that you understand actually what it's in for them, actually what's really relevant.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I would say let's move on and talk about the creative branding process. Branding can be quite a creative process, as we see as well so often, and people are wasting time and so many months as well, often trying to get their business cards ready, their website, and they always say, "I'm not ready." It sounds a little bit often like a scope creep where things never get completed. So, how can the creative part of branding stay on track from your perspective?
Well, first, I want to pull apart the two different, well, there's many different definitions of creativity, but I just want to pull apart two types of creativity that I work with in branding a lot. One is the so-called creative, like creative with a capital C, which is, when you refer to the business cards and the website, the stuff that a designer might work on, that's typically called the creative. That's one kind of creative. And then the other kind of creative is, more your attitude and behavior, which can be more linear and analytical, or more open-minded and creative. And I think those are two different things, and they're both important. So when I use the word creative, I'll clarify what I mean. I think your question is about, how do you not get hung up on the first kind, the capital C creative, because there's so much to do and so much to put out there, and it never feels like you're ready. Right? Do I understand your question correctly?
Yes, absolutely.
So I think that one of the laws of entrepreneurialism is start before you're ready, right? I think none of us feel ready to start, and those of us, and I count myself among them, who tend a little bit more toward perfectionism and wanting to do everything really, really well, struggle most of all with this. And I think the answer is get good enough and go and make sure your definition of good enough is not too high of a bar. There's an expression in product development, minimum viable product, and I think that's such a good word to live by. I think it's more of an engineering word, but I now that I know it, I think about it all the time in the context of what I do and what all of my clients do. Think about, it's so antithetical, right, to being sort of an A student or an overachiever, the minimum viable product. How could I possibly go out into the world with the minimum? And yet, really, it's the opposite, right? Because if you allow yourself to go into the world with the minimum, remember, it's viable. It's not just, something slapped together. But if you go into the world with the minimum viable product, you're going out into the world earlier and you can serve more people faster and get off the ground faster and test and learn and refresh and reiterate based on what you're learning. And so getting into that mindset, and now is where we start talking about the other kind of creative that I was talking about. And I'm sure you've heard of design thinking and this idea of taking the way that creatives or designers think and applying it to business. This idea of experimenting with something, putting something out there, getting some feedback, iterating on that, changing it up, and putting another thing out there again. I think that's the solution to this problem of feeling like, oh my gosh, there's so much to do, and how will I ever be ready? You know what? If your business cards are not ready, you can still take that meeting. If your website is just a landing page, it's still okay to launch it. If you've got a product or an idea or a service or an offering of any kind that feels like it needs to be in the world, go put it into the world, and everything else will follow. And in fact, that capital C creative, all of those what I call customer touch points, will be the better for it, because you're going to be creating those um, as you're getting feedback from your customers. And so it can be an evolving process. And what's wonderful about the way technology works today is, you can create your own website yourself. So it's not, olden days process where you handed it off to some black box and they came back with a website and you were going to wait another 3 years before you touched that thing because it was going to cost you however many $1,000 and however many months, right? I can change one line or one picture on my website every day if I want to. And so that, I think, process of iteration and not getting too hung up on getting to perfect is a good solution.
Yeah, great. Great. So actually, that shows that we really can avoid these things of just getting stuck in trying to make perfection. instead of getting things really done. But when it comes actually to moving on and saying, okay, as we had from the beginning, you said branding strategy and all these things. Once one more or less has a strategy, one needs to somehow scale it. So, what are your tips to scaling one's business, one's brand visibility, whether it's in a local or in a global market?
So, my perspective on this is try to pull back for a moment from thinking about, I'm going to build my platform. I've got to have this many followers. What are the different social media outlets I need to be on? Again, those are your tactics, and you are going to do those things, practically speaking. But if you can think about it from a mindset of your customers are your friends, right? When you build a brand or you build a business, that relationship that you're looking for with your constituents is the very same as what you're looking for in a personal relationship. You're looking for trust, you're looking for authentic from both sides, by the way. Trust, authenticity, genuine connection, conversation, dialogue, sort of a two-way street. And I think to think of it from that perspective, first of all, it takes a lot of the pressure off of, oh God, I have to show up today and I have to increase the number of followers. It makes it more fun. But it also makes it more sustainable, right? Those relationships become stickier because they're genuine and they're like friendships, right? The more you put into it of yourself, of your real story, the more you're going to get back from them, and the more long lasting and strong that bond is going to be with your constituents. And then you can go and think about, of course, what are the right outlets for me? Is my product more visual and I should be on Instagram? Is it more, more of a conversation? I want to be on Twitter. Or, am I a business to business brand and LinkedIn is the place for me? And what combination of effort should I have on those things, or Facebook? But those are tactics, right? Those are choice, and you can change them at any time, and amp up your effort on one or the other. But the overall relationship that you're thinking about building with your customers is what really counts. And I think the other hack I would offer there is to think very clearly about what your messages are and try to challenge yourself to narrow down to, if you only could say 3 things over and over again for the rest of the year to your customers, what would they be? What would your 3 messages be? And first of all, that's a great branding exercise to sort of tighten up, who you are and what you stand for. And then it also gives you a structure to what it is that you're communicating. So if you kind of have that list tacked up in your workspace, when you're sending out a tweet, or you name it, across social media, does it relate in some way to one of those 3 messages? Is a really handy way to sort of keep consistent what it is that you're putting out into the world. It doesn't have to be that you're reiterating the exact messages, because that's quite boring, but it prevents you from posting cat videos, for example, right? And it sort of keeps you on brand and on message.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. Because I often see it as well. Many people mess up their own personal and the company brands with the wrong pictures, the wrong stuff they post, and that. And sometimes it doesn't make much sense,
Yeah.
as I say. And if they don't really focus on what their core brand is, what the vision and mission is, and on the end as well, of course, all the core items, the core message, why they're actually doing this whole thing, it makes no sense. There's no personal touch to it. And as you just said as well, it's so important to think about your customers as your friends, because in the end, when you regularly do business with them and you're regularly in contact, you actually develop sort of it's like a friendly relationship, because you regularly do business, you chat about different things, and eventually you do business with each other. And it's a great thing. And especially when they then actually introduce you to other
Yes.
high quality clients, they're actually opening their network of friends who are as well entrepreneurs or business leaders. So they actually do business with you. And it doesn't matter whether it's just locally or distance and that.
Yeah.
It's so important. I see it from other things that I've been doing as well in the past. It's a great thing if you focus on that, providing extra service, getting that experience, as you said, like for instance, amazing customer service, and especially exceeding expectations. It's that extra mile that one has to go instead of just thinking about how can I make money and that's it. That's not going to build that lifetime value that we have with our customer relationships otherwise. Yeah, it was
Exactly.
great having you on our show, and definitely was quite interesting when I look at all, even my notes as well. It was very, very interesting, especially when you look at the things, how we orientate us, how we go about with our attitude as well, whether we're just linear and trying to be somehow put everything in a box and never get finished, or be open-minded to things and test stuff out and say, okay, I'll try this out and go out and develop it partly as well on the business without being actually messy or just doing something that's absolutely off the side, like cat images and that stuff. Although sometimes it can be quite funny, but it should be always in the right position.
It's okay to
That
share.
place.
It's great to share some of your personal, your personality. That, of course, is fine.
Mhm.
If you're, I use the cat video example only because it's so, sort of trite and prevalent. Now, if you happen to be somebody who rescues cats or volunteers, if that's part of your, deep, something you deeply care about, that's maybe something different, right? Then you can post your cats. But just thinking mindfully about what it is that you're including in your brand.
Exactly. For instance, if your logo is has a cat in it and so on, or your mascot
Yeah.
is a cat, then it fits. But if you, let's say you're selling food dog and your mascot is a dog, and you're posting pictures of a cat, doesn't somehow, I think the audience would be a bit confused and can't see the relation to it and to the relevance as well of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So yeah, it was great having you, and thank you very much for being here on the show. And yeah,
thank you so much for having me. This was a really interesting conversation. I appreciate it.
thank you. I hope you found the information helpful. I have for you several interesting guests for the next episodes of our show. So the next episode coming up will have as main topic video marketing. How can we increase our visibility for our business or our course by using videos and leveraging what we can do in order to expand the amount of people that we can influence and gain as clients or supporters? I go deeper into that topic, whether it's how to create your videos, what to focus to get it quick and simple, not overcomplicated things, but delivering a proper quality that is more or less acceptable in the current situation. Well, that's all for today's episode of The Growth Zone. Thank you for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or Spotify so you never miss an episode. Plus, if you haven't got your signed copy of the marketing book, stop by on our website at book.prmediareach.com and hurry, because the reserved batch of signed books are almost sold out. So the address is book.prmediareach.com. I'll repeat, book.prmediareach.com.